Hello, Mama Pat. I wanted to take a few moments to share with you some things about the relationship between your son Doran and me. Him being my best friend, lifelong, from the eighth grade to beyond the grave. Because our friendship did not cease to exist when Doran transitioned from reality into eternity. It simply took on another form, maybe, because Doran and I share the type of relationship that few people share, and that's true friendship, true love for each other. Don't judge each other, accept each other 100%, good, bad, ugly. That was the type of relationship that Doran and I shared, and I only shared that relationship with one other man, and that man also shared my first name, my middle name, and my last name, my father. Because yes, not only was my father, but we were also best friends. In order for me to I was born really get into who me and Doran were as friends, I got to start off a little bit about who I was before I met Doran. I was born in a cauldron of domestic violence. My father came back from Vietnam with post-traumatic stress disorder, and in a fit of rage, he jumped in the car with my sister. And my mom, trying to protect my sister, she jumped in the car. And my grandmama, trying to protect my mama and my sister, my father's mother, she jumped in the car. All riding with a man who was basically drunk out of his mind. Long story short, my father ran head on into a garbage truck. My grandmother died in that accident. My father ended up in a coma. My mother ended up with her hip, her pelvis shattered. Inside of her pelvis and in her womb was me. Sitting on her lap was my sister Valerie. Now this was back in 1966 when they didn't have seat belts and didn't have airbags. So my sister Valerie served as the airbag for my mother. her body served as the airbag. So my sister traded her life for mine. So when I was born 8 months later, I was already living on borrowed time. And a lot of people don't really understand that concept of borrowed time. But for those who don't understand, borrowed time means that in reality, your time is already up. And you're really not supposed to be here. You're supposed to be gone. But you're still here, but you may leave here at any time. And that fact shaped a lot of my life and my attitude about life. I never really expected to live that long. Fast forward to the 8th grade, Hopkins Junior High School, Hopkins, South Carolina. Two young men ran into each other. Myself and Doran Jones. I don't quite remember when we met, how we met, why we met. But what I do know is when we met, we became instant friends. And that friendship solidified into a relationship that would span decades and even end up spanning the grave. For whatever reason, Doran and I both lived on borrowed time. Now, we never discussed this. I never told Doran why I was living on borrowed time. Doran never talked to me about why he was living on borrowed time. But neither one of us really expected to live that long. Not that we really thought about it every day. We were concerned we weren't going to be here tomorrow. We really didn't care, truth be told. Doran's mantra in life was don't sweat the small stuff. And oh, by the way, it's all small stuff. And my mantra, equally as crazy, if not even crazier, was no one who has ever died lived to regret it. So as you can see, Doran and I had no concept of, we were basically fearless. I mean, if you don't fear death, you're not, that once you get to the point where you don't fear death, that pretty much wipes everything else off the table. You don't care what people think. You ain't worried about what this one say, what that one say. All of the things that control other people's actions, Doran and I simply did not care. On top of that, even all the way back in the 8th grade, Doran and I shared an addiction for the fairer sex. We loved women. We could not get enough. Could not get enough. I don't care how many, who, what, when, or where. Doran and I just could not get enough. We loved women. And because of that, we always had drama with a lot of the other guys in school. Somebody always wanted to fight me or fight Doran, or there was a couple of other ladies' men in between Hopkins and Laura Richland at that time that a lot of people always had on the hit list. So me and Doran always had to have each other's back because it was always something. But remember who Doran and I were. We simply did not care what other people thought. Period. That's just how we roll. Part of who Doran and I developed into as young men stemmed from the fact that we didn't have enough sense to realize that most of the bragging that guys do in the locker room is just that. They bragging, they lying, all of the girls that they say that they've conquered and all of the conquest, 99.9% of these guys are lying. Unfortunately, Doran and I did not have enough sense to realize that these guys were lying. Matter of fact, I didn't find out till years later when I talked to some of these young ladies. But to make a long story short, because Doran and I didn't have enough sense to realize that these guys were lying about a lot of things, whether it came to whatever misadventures they had gotten into that weekend, or with women, or racing, or whatever. We just, we believed these clowns, and we went out and we began to live the lies that these guys were telling. We became the lies that guys told in the locker room, especially when it came to being ladies' men. For better or for worse, we always had girlfriends spanned across several different high schools all at the same time. For no better reason than why not? As I look back over those times, I wish that we had thought better. But the truth is, we didn't. The truth is that Doran and I were, we had equal parts, especially when you mix us together like yellow and blue make green. We had equal parts of what makes men heroes and what makes men villains. Doran and I were fearless. We wasn't afraid of anybody. We wasn't afraid of anything. We didn't care what people thought. So we really didn't have to deal with the restrictions that a lot of people had to deal with. We just didn't care. So we began to just do whatever we were big enough to get away with. Whatever we were big enough to do, we would do it. Whether it was good, whether it was bad, whether whatever. We were big enough to get away with it. We felt like doing it. We was going to do it. Which reminds me of the time that it was something that I was doing that I wasn't supposed to be doing, and my sister said, "Mama gonna kill you when you get home." And I smiled at her and said, "Then I better have a good time, because I ain't got long to live." And for the most part, when, when it came to life, that was the attitude me and Doran had. We were best friends. We always had each other's back. We stirred up a lot of controversy. In fact, one time, I got word that a whole neighborhood of guys was planning on jumping on Doran. And so I brought a knife to school. I was prepared to get the message that it had popped off at any time. Nothing happened all day. At the end of school, I was upstairs in K building at Lower Richland doing what I do best, talking to a young lady. When somebody ran around the corner and yelled, "They got Doran in the parking lot." That's all I needed to hear. I dropped my books, pulled out my knife, and ran all the way from K building to the parking lot, prepared to stab the first person I came in contact with until I found out who it was that was fighting Doran, and then they would get the final stab. Luckily, before I got to the group, maybe I was about 3 or 4 steps away, knife prepared to stab, I hear somebody yelling from the berm over to the side. "Emerson, I'm over here, man." So I stopped, put my knife away, walked over to the berm, and Doran and I had a good laugh. But that just shows you the fierce loyalty that we had for each other. We never started trouble. We never started fights. But if somebody wanted to fight, it was on. We didn't care. If you want to dance, turn on the music. I mean, Doran and I would rather be talking to the ladies, but if y'all want to fight, we can go on and do that too. And then we'll go talk to the ladies because that's just how we were. Several times at football games and dances and you name it, there was always a crowd of misfits that decided the ladies' men needed somebody to teach them a lesson. So me and Doran just did what we had to do. One thing that separated Doran and I is the fact that we were like yin and yang. Out of all the time that I've known Doran, from 8th grade to the age of 50, in all of that time, I have never seen Doran get angry. Believe it or not, I have never seen Doran get angry, no matter what was going on. Even if we had to fight, the only thing Doran would have to say is, well, if you sure that's what you want to do? Let's go on and get it on. If that's what you want to do, you sure that's what you want to do? Let's do it. But as far as getting mad and raising hell and cussing, nah, that wasn't Doran. Me, I'm probably gonna cuss you out. Doran, never. Now me, I had a temper. I would get angry. I'd be ready to burn down the whole city. Doran was always calm. So we often operated like yin and yang, yin and yang. Hothead, calm person. As life went on, Doran and I end up taking separate paths. Life carried us in different directions. The military carried us in different directions. But even though we went in different directions, our lives often traveled on parallel tracks. Doran became a Mason, I became a Mason. I went in the military, Doran went in the military. I end up married, Doran end up married. I'm having kids, Doran having kids. We became husbands, we became fathers, we became soldiers, we became paratroopers jumping out of jets. Even though we were in different parts of the world oftentimes, our lives were traveling on parallel tracks. So who was Doran? Doran was the light in the room. Doran was the type of person that when he walked in the room, people would light up. He always had a positive attitude, always showed up with a joke, a smile, a laugh. People loved that about Doran. What's crazy is Doran and I, even though we never enrolled in Benedict College, I guarantee you we spent enough time at Benedict College chasing the ladies to both have earned a master's degree. Guaranteed. We spent so much time at Benedict that we actually would end up in some of the talent shows that they would have. Because we'd be around, Doran could sing, I could halfway sing. Next thing you know, me and Doran, we in talent shows at Benedict like we students, and they ain't never paid not one day of tuition. But Lord knows we had a good time as young men growing up. We were fearless and we were reckless. And like I said, those traits make you a hero, but they also can make you a villain. We were fearless in that there was no challenge that we wouldn't attack. Whether it was becoming paratroopers, jumping out of jets, going to war, traveling around the world with the military, you name it. Me and Doran, it was par for the course. Never thought twice about it. Never thought twice about traveling around the world, fighting, facing bullets and bombs and whatever, player. We never cared. Fearless. But unfortunately, we were also reckless in things that we did, situations that we got ourselves into, relationships. We were reckless. And as we matured as men, I think that we both regretted the effect that some of our reckless behavior had on people who we loved, cared about. And as time went on, we wanted to be better men for our children. Because for the most part, as young men, before we had kids, tomorrow never really mattered. If you die, you won't live to regret it. Whatever. It is what it is. We do what we do. But after you become a family man and start having children and years go by, you start seeing the effects that your recklessness has on people who you love. And you see, as when we were in high school, Doran and I vowed that we would never grow up. And we had every intention of never growing up. We would never let the pressures of life and the responsibilities drag us down and stop us from being both fearless and reckless. Because it's exciting being fearless and reckless. And we had intended to carry that throughout the rest of our lives. However, Muhammad Ali once quipped and said that if you're the same man at 25 that you were at 50 that you were at 25, then you've wasted 25 years of your life. And I must admit that in spite of our best efforts, We did grow up. We did learn to shoulder responsibility. We did learn to temper some of our actions, and I underline some of our actions so that our recklessness did not affect those that we love. The last time I came home to visit South Carolina, Doran and I sat down and had a long, long discussion. We talked about life, marriage, businesses, religion, you name it. Doran told me, he said, Emerson, the doctor tells me that I've got heart problems, but you know I ain't gonna let that stop me. Right then he lit up a cigarette and ordered another drink. I said to Ray, come on, dog. Cigarettes killed my father. Don't let it kill you too. He smiled and winked at me. Because Doran and I were always the type to smile and wink at death. When death smiles at you, wink and smile back. That was our attitude. But then I went to a place that only a best friend can go. I looked Doran straight in the eye. I said, Doran, are you living under the law or are you living under grace? Because see, if you living under the law, then when you leave here, you're not going to make it to heaven. In fact, we both know that neither one of us going to make it to heaven if we got to stand before St. Peter and answer for the long list of foolishness that we have engaged in throughout our lifetimes. However, if we can stand in front of St. Peter and express the fact that we are living under the grace of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, then we can wink and smile at St. Peter and say, yeah, I know I ain't supposed to be here. I know I ain't supposed to be living in a mansion and walking on the streets of gold. However, I am here based on the grace of my Lord and Savior. I know you got a long list. But you know what? Matter of fact, there's some things that you ain't even got on the list. But it's all covered under grace. So if you don't mind, I'm going to move into my mansion. And I'm going to walk on these streets of gold. And my best friend looked me in my eye and he said, Emerson, I am living under grace. He said that emphatically. No question. I'm living under grace. Why is that impossible? That's impossible. Why is that important? That is important because that is a large part of Doran's legacy, who he was as a man, the message that he left behind for people to understand. It ain't about being a perfect man. It's about being a man who understands that no matter how perfect you might live, no matter how you may have deluded yourself that you live without sin, that we have all sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. And the only way we're going to get in is under grace. Now, I know there's plenty of people out there who believe that they are good enough to deserve to go to heaven. Good luck. That is very amusing to me. Because it's going to be funny when people like me and Doran walking on streets of gold. And people who believe that they have kept every commandment from birth find themselves walking through the gates of hell. Because the one thing they never realized was that we are all born in sin and shaped in iniquity. So when you came out of your mother's womb, you were already pointed in the direction of hell. Now, if you read the same Bible that I read, born in sin, shaped in iniquity. That's scripture. So that's Doran's legacy. Not that he was a perfect man. Doran was far from perfect. As his best friend, I'm here to tell you. Because a lot of his imperfections, I was there with him. If you can imagine all of the foolishness that young men can get into, multiply that about 20, and you might be 1/3 of the way to the foolishness that me and Doran got into, collectively and separately. But with that, we also did a lot of wonderful things. We served our country. We wore the uniform. We became husbands. We became fathers. So were we perfect men? Not by a long shot. Were we men who did the best we could with what we knew? Yes. Did we grow up learning a lot of things that we later found out was pure foolishness? Yes, absolutely. There was a lot of things that we accepted as this is part of manhood. This is part of being a man. This is how men roll. That we later found out was pure foolishness. Without a doubt. So as best friends, we were not perfect men, but we did the best we could with what we knew. And when we learned better, most of the time we did better. All of the time, no. Most of the time when we learned better, we did better. So, less than 60 days after Doran and I had the discussion about him living under grace, I get a phone call, or either somebody contacted me on Facebook. Doran is gone. Now, it took me a while to comprehend what Doran is gone meant. I just saw Doran. I was just home. How can he be gone? Emerson, Doran is gone. When the realization of what I was being told finally hit me, I had not felt that type of pain since my father passed. And I immediately started making preparations to fly to South Carolina. At which time I met with his wife, helped her through everything I could help her with, met with the family. And when I looked in the casket and saw my best friend, I had to look to the heavens for strength. But I was also happy because his troubles were over. And I knew the conversation that we had, which was he was living under grace. Doran was the type of a person, like I said, when he walked into the room, he lit the room up. Doran was fiercely loyal to his friends. He would protect his family and his friends. He wasn't a perfect man, and neither was I. But he was a man that did the best he could with what he knew and what he had. Mama Pat, this video cannot end without me talking about who you were in my life. The fact that you had room in your heart for one more knucklehead had an impact on my life that you probably will never fully understand. There was a lot of wisdom that you shared with me that you probably figured that I wasn't listening to. I was listening. And it probably was the difference between me ending up spending life in prison and me ending up spending the life that I'm living right now. 28 years of marriage, 31-year military career, PhD behind my name, summer home, winter home, as opposed to angry young man, statistic, shot by the police, incarcerated by the state. Your wisdom is a big part of who I turned out to be as a man. Not a perfect man. I don't think if Mother Teresa herself would have put her hands on me and prayed for me, I would have turned into a perfect man. But my life didn't turn into nowhere near the calamity that it could have become, considering that I lived by the mantra, no one who has died ever lived to regret it. And to Yesha, Doran's little sister, my little sister, I will always love you. You will always be my little sister, even though from a very young age you had way more sense than me and your big brother. Oh my God. I was always so proud of you and always proud to watch you grow into womanhood. Harvey, my little brother, so proud of you. And I hope somewhere between the craziness that your brother and I taught you, I hope that we also endowed you with some wisdom that will make you a better man as you travel through life. To Doran's children, your father was real. He was a real person. Not a perfect person. He was a real person. Fiercely loyal. Positive attitude. Life of the party. When people were down, they could count on Doran to lift their spirits. That's priceless. When people were down, they could always count on Doran to say, don't sweat the small stuff. And it's all small stuff. And we're going to get through this together. That's who your father was. That is who Doran Jones was. Because of that, I love you all like you are my own children. And you can reach out to me any time. Yesha and Harvey, you already know. Mama Pat, of course you know. God bless you all. And Mama Pat, as you write this book, if there's any additional insight that you need from me about who I was, who Doran was, as we crossed paths with each other, what it was that made us who we were as friends, reach out. Reach out to me. God bless y'all. I love you. Good night.